what I absolutely love and I think is one of my strengths is to over time always tune into where the person is and respecting where they're coming from, what their life circumstances are, whether they're single in a relationship, and then to choose a few suggestions that are part of a master plan on what are they ready to integrate or to try out. And so we're touching on lifestyle, routine, diet, movement, stress reduction, the full spectrum.
I just had the great pleasure of having a really rich, nourishing conversation with Monika. Monika Jaeckle is a just a brilliant being to start with, but she is a educator and she offers workshops and also one-on-one mentorship, integrating the yogic and Ayurvedic traditions into lifestyle, diet, habit changes that produce well-being and health. And we talk about that. She goes into some specifics that were really helpful for me personally. I think they will be for you too. And so what I also appreciate and what you'll hear is this is both practical and very real around, things we can do on the physical plane to support ourselves in health. But also there was a deep medicine being transmitted just in her peace of mind and the way that we connected together. So take a deep breath, because that's where we start, and enjoy this conversation. So what strikes me, Monika, as important is there are many, many traditions and philosophies for health and healing, but they all kind of point the same place, right? They tend to have commonalities. So you are a practitioner of yoga and Ayurveda. So what is it pointing us towards? If you could actually answer that question, what are these traditions pointing us towards?
Oh my God, that's a powerful question. First of all, I want to say Ayurveda, for those who have never heard of it, it's Ayurveda, the science of life, or the knowledge or wisdom of life, the truth of life, and longevity. And it's sometimes referred to as the mother of all healing. And it is probably one of the more comprehensive, all-encompassing ways of achieving health and happiness. It comes from ancient India and from the Indus Valley. And it is, when I say ancient, I mean ancient, thousands of years. There are three major works written and many other minor works written on Ayurveda. And just as Ayurveda and yoga are intricately intertwined. So it exponentially makes the study of Ayurveda deeper. So you're asking, what are all these other paths pointing to?
Mm-hmm.
I think awareness and connection,
Mm.
and a connection to nature, everything out there, nature in terms of the trees and the seas and the fields and the plants and our own nature, our inner nature, nature of relationships, the nature and a connection to a higher self or to a higher reality. So connection. And of course, for connection to be felt and experienced and lived, we need awareness. So we could say many, many of these holistic, I shall say, practices, whether it's even Western science, or if it comes from the East, I think an enhanced mindfulness and awareness is often the starting point. And it's a doorway, right? It's a doorway to understanding and embracing life. And it's a starting point.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up Western science, because I'm thinking of how neuroplasticity and so much is happening, especially I'm finding, of course, quantum medicine, energy medicine, and neuroscience. And that now it's all these ancient traditions and practices are being proven to regulate the nervous system, bring us into that rest and digest nervous system, or slow the heartbeat, calm the wavelengths in the brain, But I'm being drawn towards breath. Like if we could just be very fundamental, right? Because one of these doorways to connection and awareness in so many traditions is breath. So where does breath fit into the tradition, and in your own experience, how do you utilize breath for your own health and well-being or with your clients?
Yeah, I think it begins with just noticing the body being breathed. And by, they say whatever you give attention to, that the energy goes. So when we we have to slow down and give attention to just simply noticing sensations of the breath, either movements in the body or even more subtle sensations as the air flows in and out in the nostrils, perhaps beginning to notice the different temperature, different texture, and this slowing down and paying attention to the breath. Oh my God, it has like hundreds of benefits. But I think most importantly for me, it is um, it is incredibly accessible. It's free. It doesn't cost anything, and it begins to um, shift us into a way of observing ourselves in connection with the outside world. The oxygen, the air comes from, I mean, talk about connection to nature, right? Like the flow of oxygen around the planet Earth. And we're all breathing this in, we're all exhaling and purifying. And so going deeper in the yoga tradition and Ayurveda, breath, then we can evolve with our consciousness of breath to allow it to lengthen, to allow it to deepen, to begin to understand how even holding our hand to the belly and taking the deep breath has an effect on our microbiome, um, and how we can create a feeling of spaciousness. So many wonderful things. We can regulate, upregulate, downregulate the nervous system. When we inhale, we activate the fight or flight, the sympathetic nervous system. Exhalation will regulate the parasympathetic rest and digest nervous system. It's a wonderful wild world when we talk about just breath and breath awareness.
Yeah, for some reason, I'm getting this visualization of a businesswoman, and she's going up to a board meeting, and she's getting in the elevator because she's going to present, and she just takes deep breaths.
Yeah.
And how when we do that, when we just, like right now, anyone listening, you can be driving, you can be just listening as you're walking. It doesn't matter. We're breathing. How are you breathing? What does it feel like to slow down the breath?
Yeah.
And I'm a yoga practitioner, and I did my 200-hour training as well, and just have always been also as a massage therapist in the past, Jinshin practitioner, herbalist. I mean, my background was health. That was my original business industry. So this is like home to me. I'm so excited about these things. I'm so excited, and always have found that for me, breath is my ally.
Mm-hmm.
It is powerful. And you pointed out the connection. We share air. We just are constantly sharing the same space on the planet with the entire planet and the trees.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. So the elements, so air is breath. Could we talk through the four elements? Is that a part of the tradition? I just love talking about air and water and earth and fire.
I know, it's so fun to really explore this, both through, some concept, but also then more through observation again. And so according to Ayurveda, it does have a 5-element model, I could say, and there is ether or space, which is sort of like the first element, right? And everything, there has to be space for anything to happen. And then space begins to move, and air is the second element. So it starts with the most subtle, if you want to think about an evolution of the elements. And then the air moves more, and the friction gives us fire, right? And then we get water and earth. And so from the most subtle element to the most stable and gross element, we have this full range in the elements, and the elements are within us, right? They're in our body and they're around us everywhere. All manifestation of nature has these 5 elements. And
you're probably going to go here, but I'm thinking about the doshas, right? These are the body types. Maybe you can explain them and where the elements play out and how that might help listeners diagnose or have a better sense of their constitution. No, that's a giant question, but I let's jump in, because I know people are hungry for knowledge that they can apply.
So here's what, in my experience, I have found. When it comes to beginning to put on the hat of Ayurveda and to begin to think in this holistic way, instead of jumping to taking a dosha quiz and saying, what dosha am I? So, very simply, space and air are associated with Vata dosha, and these are biodynamic psychophysiological forces, right? Or biodynamic forces that exist in us and out there, right? And then, so air, space, Vata dosha, movement is the primary function. And then fire, the fire element is associated with Pitta dosha, Pitta. And Pitta is about transformation, right? Metabolism, transformation. And Kapha dosha is the earth, water element, and that is stability and lubrication. So if you just for a moment think about a body, beginning with our skeletal system, right? And think about the muscles. That is Kapha dosha, and the lubrication of the joints. I mean, that gives our stability. That's the earth element, our skeletal muscle, our musculoskeletal system. And then think about how every day, we're eating, and the hormones and digestive juices that help us transform the fire in us, that helps us transform matter and nutrients into energy. That is the power of Pitta dosha. So we all have that, right? And then Vata dosha is movement. So it's inhalation, exhalation. It's the movement of the joints. It's the movements of thoughts. It's the movement of the cells. So just that sort of as a fundamental kind of basis, all right? So we all have that, just to kind of maybe start with that. And then for anybody who wants to begin to sort of explore what these elements and what these doshas do, there is this principle of, well, let's just start very simply. There's tremendous power in just beginning to observe. Every element, every dosha has certain biocharacteristics. It has certain attributes, right? So these are adjectives. So for example, okay, to place myself, I'm here in northern Vermont. It's a cold, clear winter day with a cover of ice and snow on the ground. So it is considered Vata, the Vata time of year. And what are the qualities that I can experience? It's cold. That's part of Vata dosha, okay? It is dry because the cold pulls out the moisture, and it's rough, it's clear, and it's light. Right? It's like when there's cold, there's also more clarity. If you notice, when it's very, very cold, you can see the planets much more clearly, right? So clear, light. It's also on a windy day, if there's wind, right? So these are the qualities of Vata dosha. So you can begin by observing these qualities around you in others, um, simply and in yourself. So do I feel, how do I feel, when I go for a walk outside? Can I begin to experience these qualities? And so,
What are some of the emotional, like anxious? Is anxious a Vata? What are some of the emotional
yeah.
aspects of Vata? Yeah.
So now I want to introduce like a key concept that is really critical for Ayurveda, and it's called like increases like, and opposites balance. So we run into trouble when any of these qualities get out of balance. So for example, this example of a cold winter day that is dry. So let's say even if we're inside, we're still affected by it, right? But we have the heat and inside, but still we can't get away from the dosha of Vata on a day like this and in this season. So so when things, let's say I come inside and I'm going to um, eat something that is very light and dry and rough, for example, sprouts and popcorn and a big raw salad, which is light and cold and rough, right? And then I'm going to sit and listen to really loud music and watch a horror movie where there's a lot of action. And then I decide I'm going to get on a treadmill and run. So I am increasing the qualities of cold, dry, rough, mobile. And how am I going to feel? Um, not very good. So you asked about the emotional. So the physiological, there's a physiological response to that imbalance that I just created because of my life, my choices. And then there's an emotional anxiety. Anxiety and fear are particularly um, a sign that Vata dosha is out of balance. So I gave you an example of doing more of the same, right? Bringing in more of the cold, rough, light, mobile qualities through my choices. And it almost doesn't matter, even though these are physical things, it will have an effect on my nervous system. It will also affect my emotions. It will affect my mind because you're affecting the body and mind.
I'm so appreciating the lens from which you see the world and how I mean, I can feel where we're going. We're going towards balance, but that's the awareness piece you talked about, right? Connection and awareness. So, to have that lens of what am I doing and what is it producing? And maybe to look instead, how can I balance?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is fantastic. So I want to know, I'm thinking a hot tub would be a good idea and some soup and tea instead
Yes.
of the salad, but continue on. What would look more balancing?
Okay. So what would be more balancing? Okay, many wonderful things. First of all, regularity, right? So getting up before sunrise, regular, using the morning time for sort of a morning sadhana, eating a warm porridge-like breakfast, which is unctuous, and maybe put some oil in it or ghee or butter or coconut oil with spices that are warming. So warming, unctuous. stabilizing. So routine is stabilizing, getting up at a certain time, eating at noontime, 3 meals a day at a regular time, regularizing. It's considered free medicine. And we also refer to that as circadian medicine, right? We know that.
Nice, nice.
So,
I'm a big fan of rhythms in life and calendars too.
yeah,
So
yeah.
this is good. This
And
is
it
good.
changes.
This is so important for a lot of women, entrepreneurs, and career women, which is a ton of who's listening. That we can get really excited and in movement and in our thoughts and air and all of that energy, and how important it is to bring that down, create steady patterns in our life, in our schedules, in our breath, in our food. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a couple of other things during winter season, and pay attention to the day, because a winter day may look very different, whether you're in Georgia or Chicago or Hawaii.
Australia.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, that's the southern hemisphere, so
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
talking about the northern hemisphere.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but let's say, I'm talking about a day that is really Vata, I mean, classic, cold, dry, rough, clear, and it put a little wind in there, and we definitely have Vata. So then, of course, routines, then diet, as we already touched on, unctuous, warm, more heavier. So definitely, add the avocado and the oil and the ghee and the spices. And even if you're non-vegetarian, some, fish or some other proteins, stews and soups, they're all warming and unctuous and grounding. We want that stabilizing grounding. And in wintertime, we actually are more able to digest the heavier foods. And don't worry about adding a few pounds or so, because the time will come to lighten up. So daily movement in the wintertime, um, well, I would say uh, that will depend a little bit on the particular person and what their constitution is, right? So I could talk about that more. Then the other thing for Vata dosha is stress reduction, breath practices, yoga, anything that regulates the nervous system. And what's so wonderful, Joy, we have now this wealth of information of somatic psychology and what you touched on earlier, the neuroplasticity, but in particular, both the nervous system and also understanding the connection between the microbiome and the health of the brain. And so stress, nervous system regulation and stress is huge, especially if one has a tendency of already having more Vata qualities in your constitution, or if you feel like I'm out of balance, and because I'm anxiety, can't sleep, which is another sign of lightness, right? Light sleep. Um, yeah.
Yeah.
Cold hands and feet, right?
Or
Cold,
dry, right? Dry skin.
dry
Yeah.
skin, dry, you can even,
Mouth.
yeah, or constipation, right? It's dryness in that part of the body, dry skin. So the inner skin and the outer skin, oleation, abhyanga. Oh my God, I'm so glad I remembered this. This is such a wonderful, amazing tool from Ayurveda. And so this is Abhyanga. It means it's an oil self massage, and you do it in a particular order. And so you warm some oil, sesame oil or herbalized oil, and sneha in Sanskrit is oil, and it also means love. So when we practice this snehana or abhyanga, we are not only applying moisture, lubrication, but we're also massaging ourselves. We're stimulating the lymphatic system. And then when we allow that oil to seep in, we are stimulating, it seeps in to all the layers of the skin. It actually stimulates neurotransmitters such as serotonin, and it's amazing. It pretty much covers, grounding, calming nervous system. And
It's so I this is so great we're talking about this because I got my license in massage in my mid-20s.
Ah,
And I practiced for 10 years. I loved it. I loved giving people massage and letting healing energy come through oil. Just so powerful how people can change through touch. But during that period, I had what I called spa Sundays. And I gave myself massage on Sundays, like an hour, sometimes an hour and a half. And I just want to testament to anyone who's listening. You laughed and said, yummy. I'm so glad we're talking about it. There's something about self massage with oil and that kind of touch. We know what feels good. We know where we need it. I mean, just to get creative and just nourish the skin. Our nervous system doesn't know the difference between us touching ourselves and being touched. So,
mhm.
especially if affection isn't happening in your life,
Yeah,
you can have it. It's also free, like the breath. It's right here, right now.
yeah,
Yeah. Self-love.
yeah, yeah. I think, you know, that I'm so glad you're bringing this up because, um, so many of us are hard on ourselves, and that critical mind wants to creep in. And beginning to learn ways of slowing down and paying attention, and then learning tools and skills that are readily available is so empowering. Not just empowering in by way of saying, "Oh, I know what to do," but it's empowering because we're we're creating greater self-love.
You know,
It's one of
it
the most
is.
important things.
It
Connection,
is. It's
connection.
and the slowing down piece from another perspective, in business, right? One of the biggest things that I feel like I add to entrepreneurs when I'm doing my one-on-one mentorship or I'm in my circles, it's a concentrated time to slow down, breathe, and hover above the business.
Mhm.
And when we slow down, we see new solutions, we get creative, we can rearrange priorities. The benefits of slowing down to have perspective, right now I'm talking about business, but it can be about life, it can be about anything. But to gain the perspective and slow down, bring the knowledge that we gain into action through whatever transformations need to happen, like where money is being spent or marketing strategy or a new idea or shifting the program plan, all of that, it moves the trajectory, it gets us in alignment, more magic happens, synchronicity happens, and we're just in general more of a beacon of radiance, right? So
Yeah.
this slowing down, this is a cool theme that we're on.
Yeah. No, I mean, in our work that we've done together, I can totally attest to what you're describing. And what comes to my mind, Joe, is there's another component in slowing down, in doing one thing at a time. There's an expression in Sanskrit, it's called ekatvam,
Mm.
there's no such thing. We can't really multitask. So for me, what I've noticed when I slow down, for me, I'm bringing, especially, it depends on where do I want to bring my attention to, right? Let's say I'm slowing down when I'm in a conversation with somebody, and it allows me to both sense myself, right? But it also allows myself to observe and to listen and more deeply and to be more present in the here and now. And the more I'm able to cultivate that, and believe me, I think it's a lifelong journey, but the more I'm able to cultivate that through certain practices, reminding myself every day to ground myself, be present, slow down. I have to slow down. There's something incredibly powerful that happens when my observational, when I begin to observe more without judgment. I'm noticing and I'm just observing, right? There's no judgment. This is um, there's magic in that. There's magic. There's something reveals itself to us because we're just paying attention.
Well, how we become conscious when we do slow down. Not that we're always moving slow, by the way. I mean,
No,
I've been
no,
very, very swift in my slowness. It's like talk about productivity. The days that I just really tune in, have intention, and then move in each and every moment with focus, they're so beautiful.
yeah,
They're so beautiful. But being conscious, what I was thinking is, because it's easy to live on automatic. And that's when we let our unconscious patterns, otherwise known as the shadow, take hold of our lives. And then we can be, like you said, judgmental or reactive or please or say yes when we want to say no or whatever our unconscious habits are. If we slow down and do what you're talking about, at least as I hear it, we stand back a bit, we observe, we can notice and we can make new choices.
yeah.
And so how about slowing down and the aging process? Because I wanted to talk to you about aging. I know that's a big part of longevity. It's a big part of your practice and what you work with your clients.
Mhm.
So, what can you share with us about longevity, aging, slowing down the process, but also fully enjoying it, which
Mm,
I am. My intention is to really keep enjoying getting older.
yeah. Well, I mean, ideally, and best case scenario, as we're aging and we're getting to a place where perhaps we can lighten our workload, we have more time and we're more in charge of the pace of our lives. So, I mean, most people that I know who have retired or partially retired or, have the freedom to make some decision around that, how much they work, all of a sudden you have more freedom in deciding what to do. Physiologically or chronologically, I should say, of course, there's the aging process. But physiologically, there are so many things that we can address. And when we have more time, we can actually really devote for many people, it is sort of a time, let me take care of myself in a way that I have never been able to take care of myself, right? So all of a sudden you might be able to have more freedom in how you set up your days, and or you may how you move, or what stimulates you, or more learning, new learning. That was certainly the case for me. I didn't study seriously Ayurveda until I was in my late 50s, early 60s, and got my certification.
I love that, by the way. I just want to make note of that. Anyone in their 50s who's thinking about a career change or am I
Yeah.
too old? It's like, well, go look at you. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I'm more familiar with the perspective of a woman, especially, when you approach the 50s, that is an menopause and postmenopausal period that I wish that every woman could take like a 5-year break and rest and digest and say, where have I come from? Where am I now? And where am I going?
Is that though part of your story? Just
It
since
is.
we're here and how you even got into this, can you share a little bit about your health story, whatever you're comfortable sharing? I mean,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, there's a lot to it, and some pieces started much earlier, but I did have a health scare right around that time. It's not unusual, sometimes for
right.
women for some health issue to pop up right around that time. And it can be the result of just overdoing, overworking, overhustling, and just simply not knowing how to strike that balance, or life happens and stress factors are sometimes beyond our control. And so it can be kind of a welcome, maybe not welcome, but it can be an invitation to say stop.
Right. But the invitation might come as a whisper, then it might be a bigger symptom like a yell. But for some people, it actually can be a crash. So
Yeah.
that's why I'm glad we're talking about like we can listen, slow down, listen to the
Well,
signs. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And trust your inner voice. And I
Yay.
think we can't hear it when we're rushing around and being pulled into outer activity all the time.
Well,
We
and I just want to say the routine, you were talking about routines. One of my favorite routines is just 5 minutes of automatic writing where I let my voice, my wisdom, I just ask, what is it like of my soul? You can think of it that way. What is it of my wisdom self that I most need to hear today? And then see what comes. So
Oh, I love that.
that's,
Yeah.
I love automatic writing. The more we do it and we just don't critique it, the more it's actually quite surprising who we really are and who we can access in consciousness. And then we
Yeah.
get to embody it more.
Yeah.
So, okay, that's a side note.
So,
Back to 50s,
yeah,
listening,
so I'm just going to
menopause.
touch on some of these things because there's a lot there. But I think what's interesting, if you think about that period of time, and it's true for not just women, but for men too, when we ease out of that, of those decades of transforming the Pitta stage of life, right? When we're kids, we're in the Kapha stage of life, we're building our body, and then we're coming to the Pitta stage of life. And then right around 50, 55, we're moving into what is considered the Vata stage of life, where we actually do, you know, become lighter in terms of our bones, sometimes get more brittle or lighter, but we're also primed to connect more profoundly to a higher reality. We're more primed, not just because we have opportunity, but by virtue of where we are in our life cycle. We're more primed to open to consciousness that was just simply not accessible to us, and then transform that into service. And I think sometimes I'm not so much going to talk about the physiological changes, more about that aspect of aging, um, because it's, a wonderful teacher. I forget who it was, but he said, when you approach, your mid 50s, 60s, think less doing, more being. And I often think to myself, is it possible that by virtue of what I cultivate in myself, tuning more into my energetic body, how I show up? So without having to say a whole lot, although I'm known for talking a lot, but how can the quality with which we um, are in relationships, the quality with which we are listening deeply, or even, for some people, they open up to the spiritual realm and or their own spirituality and explore that more because we're more primed in that, not because just we're have the time, of course, that too, but because we are the Vata qualities that really expansiveness, it's in an expansion. And for me, it's also an integration, integrating the best pieces of who I am and and expressing that, finding a form of expression.
And I'm feeling like also what I'm noticing is I'm bringing more being to my doing.
Ah,
So because I'm like a kid in a sandbox. I love to create. I just love it. And one of my creative expressions is through my programs and, things with Gavin now. So I'm doing, but I do notice I am bringing more being into my doing. So I'm much more in the frequency of who I be than what's getting accomplished, which means I'm more in the moment, I'm more in the process of it. Whereas when I was younger, I was always chasing the completion or the achievement. And I won't say always, I just had way more of an orientation towards what I was doing as
Yeah.
opposed to how I was experiencing my life and myself in my creativity, right? Big distinction.
Mhm.
Monika, I realized we never really got to your story. I
Oh,
love this
that's
conversation.
okay.
It's great. We're going all over the place,
That's
but
okay.
it's powerful, right? So you're in your
Yeah.
50s and you had a little bit of a wake up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, several. But what you just said, Joe, I just love
Uh-huh.
that. That you're bringing more being to your doing. And one of the things for anybody who is, younger, um, there is so much to look forward to because when we are able to cultivate that more being in what we're doing, life is so much fun. It's so rich and
Yeah.
it reveals itself as super interesting. Um, and there's never going to be enough, for anybody who is creative. I mean, we need 9 lives to do all the things that we want to do. But I think that the awe and wonder that that is accessible to us in the smallest thing, it's almost like, when I watch my little grandson or my grandkids, the curiosity and the freshness with which they engage in life, I am in touch with that now
Yay.
in
Yay.
in a sophisticated way.
Yeah, the children are living in heaven on earth, it feels like, the more childlike. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Mhm.
So yes, let's hear a little bit of how these traditions and Ayurveda has really influenced your life and your health. I just it's a beautiful testament to the power of this tradition.
Yeah. I mean, as I said before, what I love about this particular um, wisdom tradition is it is interconnected. It is so intelligent. It is proven. It is accessible. It is democratic. It is considered the greatest hope for public health. Okay, I want to put that out there because it is accessible. Sometimes when people they can't, they even have trouble saying that word Ayurveda. Just call it the mother and father of all healing. I want that. So how? Of course, I had the great privilege of taking a deep dive in learning. There's a teaching, and there's a teaching behind yoga, there's a teaching behind Ayurveda. There is this, it's part of the Vedic wisdom tradition. And um, we could almost have like a Jeopardy game on pick anything that you can think of that has to do with human life on earth or beyond, before conception, beyond death. And Ayurveda will have something to say about it that is healing, that is practical. Um, the smallest thing, like the little grain of fennel seed and how it tastes, to the understanding of the influence of the planets on us, it's all encompassing. So in terms of my own the lifestyle, the practical integration that I've done, and it takes years. It's taken me years to get slowly understand and experience um, the
Can you
effect.
go back to maybe your 50s, like when you first discovered it and what was happening in your life, if you would?
Yeah, I think one of the most powerful medicines for me were two things. One, I really got serious about my daily routine, and especially in the mornings, because the mornings are most fertile to make real lasting shifts in habit and consciousness. We're in alpha wave. There's a different vibration. Okay, it's real just because we don't see it, but we can feel it, right? So I got really serious about how I started my day. I started a little meditation. I actually started um, exploring prayer, um, and became more interested in reading spiritual texts and the and yeah, those two things really. I think the practical getting up before sunrise, getting movement out in early morning sunshine, beginning to pay attention to giving my digestive system a break from eating. Ayurveda it's really the original like intermittent fasting. So maybe these are some takeaways for anybody who wants to just get started. This is what I did. So getting up early and take a little quiet time, get still, make it cozy, make it nourishing, make it individualize it, whether it's a candle, doing some reading, but not screen time,
This
right?
is so, I love the word nourishment just for a moment here, because I'm a big morning nourishment, soul care. It's
Yeah,
my soul
yeah.
care. And, we talk about self-care, soul care, and morning warm tea. For me, we have Gavin and I get to do it together. We're looking out at the mountain.
Hmm.
Right now, we're listening to a particular teaching. So we spend about 15, 20 minutes listening with our eyes open, watching sunset, sipping tea. It's just like so nourishing. Candles are lit. Then we go into a meditative place for a while and just feel the energy. For me, that's what I do when I meditate these days. I just let light nourish me. That's why I'm stopping. I just love the word nourish. Soul
Yeah.
care, let light, let love, let those higher frequencies that feel like peace, compassion, joy. Like I just kind of tune into those frequencies and I invite those frequencies into my life, into my body, and then into my day. So I'm
Yeah.
just echoing what you're saying,
Yeah,
Monica.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's wonderful. I think being creative with this and creative in life and trying things out. I think listening to a teaching or plugging into a teaching that resonates with you and that may change over time, but sticking with something a little bit for a while, or observing nature. It could even be just having a flower in your hand, or a rock or a piece of fruit. And if you
yeah,
don't have access to a beautiful view, but this connection to both the visible and the invisible, really
mm,
connecting, feeling that, and
that's beautiful.
embracing it and making it yummy. And that's, yeah, the nourishment,
Yeah.
right? And I
And
love.
I like that we're saying this because people think sometimes of these morning practices or yoga as these like you need a lot of discipline, right? Well,
Mhm.
discipline comes from discipleship, which is all about bhakti, which is about love. So why I feel like it's not no, we don't need to do strict practices unless we love doing them,
Yeah.
right? We get to do, we get to be disciples of love and find whatever works for our own bodies to facilitate that feeling, that raising of vibration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as they
Okay.
say,
Yeah. I was gonna, so Monica, I mean, we could just keep talking and talking and talking. I tell you what, I'm also just wanting to emphasize is as a educator, you're brilliant. I'm loving, and I know that's your background, but I'm loving how you really know this so well. And are you doing more classes like group classes teaching it now? I know you can teach yoga instructors. Tell me a little
Yeah.
bit more about where you're at with all that.
Yeah. So I have an ongoing yoga class that's online on Zoom, and now I'm putting together some talks and workshops and classes for this coming year on Ayurveda and yoga, and making it very accessible and practical as a way of also connecting with people and finding out what they need, because I want to. I want to adjust it and adapt the whatever I'm doing to what people really need, especially in this moment here in where we are in time and
Mm,
space. Um, so there will be some of them will be online and some of them will be in person here in my location.
wow,
And
wow,
then,
wow.
of course, I have the one-on-one mentorship, which is amazing for
Yeah,
anybody
yeah.
who wants to, um, do more than put their big toe in and go on a journey with me for 6 months or 10 months and really go through the seasons and yeah.
That is like invaluable to have you and your knowledge and your can I say diagnostic ability? Or how would you say that maybe this is my last question, but when someone comes to you and you do your intake, how do you really get to know what are the questions you're asked? How do you do your testing to really know what's going on with the person's body?
Yeah, I think Ayurveda is unique in this, in that it doesn't treat a pathology but it treats an imbalance. So you may start and it could be a mental, emotional, psychological condition, or it could be a chronic condition. Um, and so there's a pretty thorough intake, so to speak. But then what I absolutely love, and I think is one of my strengths, is to over time always tune into where the person is and respecting their where they're coming from, what their life circumstances are, whether they're single in a relationship, and then to choose a few suggestions that are part of a master plan on what are they ready um, to integrate or to try out. And so we're touching on lifestyle, routine, diet, movement, stress reduction, the full spectrum. And I think um, so from this kaleidoscope of possibilities, which are personalized, but then the pacing of it and respecting and nudging or inspiring, um, that is both an analytic and an intuitive process. And that is something I absolutely love to do.
Well, I like what you said too. You're partnering with someone. So in addition to your knowledge and expertise, you're teaching your clients how to study their life, study themselves, and be able to make adaptations. So in 10 months or a year, I think it'd be cool to do a whole year because I
Mhm.
would think that then, people who graduate from that pretty much have a lot of tools to be able to support them for the whole rest of their lives, some of the fundamentals.
Mhm.
Learned so much from you. I just want to say thank you. Just even the littlest things and reminding me to have more cardamom and cinnamon and ginger, Oh, yeah, it's winter. Thank you.
Great, right? It's delicious too.
Oh my gosh, this has been great. Thank you for your wisdom, your knowledge, your honesty, your humility. I mean, you're just so humble, but you're brilliant.
Oh.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing so much. And I know there's so much more to share. So I would just recommend people visit Integrate Ayurveda. We'll put it in the show notes. And I'm liking these classes.
Mm.
I mean, coming together in a group and learning from you. And as a yoga instructor, I highly recommend it because you can bring it in your classroom, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, Monika,
Thank
anything you want to
you so
leave
much.
the all these listeners with? Any tip or wisdom?
I think the enjoyment that can be derived from seeing the world that way and living, making some shifts, but the enjoyment and the enrichment, I would not want anybody to miss out on that. I think that's what I'm going for.
I can tell you're totally on fire or enthused or just this is your passion, and it's really it's contagious. It's contagious. That's why you're good at teaching it, because you're having such a good time.
Thank you, Joy.
Oh,
Thank
let's join the party. Come play with Monika.
you.
Thank you. This was great.
Thanks, Joy.